Hi, guys.
Okay. People are signing on. We're about to get started. It's really exciting today because I just came back from a trip. I was just in Florida for the past few days. I was there on Friday to Tuesday, and a lot happened on this trip. And I'm going to be updating Jess about this trip in real time. So as you're hearing it, she's hearing it. So just know we haven't discussed what I'm about to talk to her about, what we're about to talk about on the podcast today, which in my opinion is exciting because I get her just like real reaction, and you're going to see the same thing. Like, this episode is basically just going to be us catching up, and you're going to see what it's like in real time, our relationship, and get to find out what happened and why we have this topic on moving on. And I feel like the title maybe should really be When Your Ex Moves On.
Yeah, I think we should change it to that because I think a lot of people will relate.
Yeah, I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to write that when your ex moves on. And so that might give you a little hint as to what we're talking about today. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Teal. I'm friends with Jess, and I was married for 10 years. So I got married super young. I was married when I was 18, and then I got divorced when I was 29. And that relationship was really pivotal for me because I was with this person from 17 years old on. I knew him even before that. And I was just really, it was a big part of my life, marriage. Like and people laugh because they meet me and they're like, wait, you're only 33. How were you married for 10 years?
Yeah.
But yeah, I got married super young and I learned a lot. And so now when I'm in this dating world, it's almost like being in college. It's almost like I'm finally on my own again, or for the first time, because I never lived alone and never really dated multiple people or have done different things. So I'm having an interesting experience. And I thought that I had moved on. I thought that I'd let a lot go. And after this weekend, after going on this trip, I realized that there were certain things I was still holding on to, and I hadn't fully moved on from my ex. And the news I got this weekend was basically, I think, the catalyst that's going to push me to finally do that.
Oof.
I know. So I went to Florida and I was with my ex's mother because I'm very, very close with her. The family was my family for a whole decade or more, and so I'm very, very close with her. We still do some work together. And she let me know this weekend that he's getting remarried. And it's so wild. The craziest thing is, Jess, the first person that I thought of in my head when she told me is his last girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like, immediately, my mind went to, oh my gosh, and her name, I'm not going to say it. I hope she's okay.
Oh, wow.
And it was this really interesting thought to have, because I know that his ex-girlfriend, his very last girlfriend, she also works with her mother-in-law. It's a small community and events. And I know she was like devastated when they broke up. And it hasn't been that long since he broke up with her. I believe it's only been September to now. So however long that is, 8 months. So if it were me and I had just ended thing with him and it was 8 months later and I found out he was getting married, I would be devastated. So it was really interesting that she was the first person I thought of was, oh, her poor heart, right? And then my higher self, this like future self, this healed self, was really happy and was like deeply happy for him. And what's so interesting is like a week or so ago, I was having dreams and I dreamt of him. And I remember waking up thinking, I wonder what it's going to be like when he gets married. Wow. So it's great. So it's kind of crazy that this happened and I found out. And, I really love that, my ex-mother-in-law, she took the time, when she was sitting with me, she held the most beautiful space for me. Like, she was quiet. She said to me too, she goes, this happened, I think like a week or so ago. She goes, but I knew I was going to see you. I wanted to tell you in person and I wanted you to hear it from me. and I just wanted to make sure you were okay. And because of our relationship, I just thought that was so beautiful. And she was so genuine. She's like holding my hand the whole time and just like, are you good? And I'm like, honestly, I just want him to be happy, and I genuinely mean that. And it sounds like this person that he's engaged to is a really, really good person. And she's so helpful and so sweet. And she's been by his side with some things that he had going on. And I said that to her. I was like, I just want to make sure he's safe and happy, and I want him to be okay. And that makes me really happy. And then this is the kicker is I'm going to work with her in June, my ex-mother-in-law, going to work with her in June in France. We used to do tons of events together, and she has this big event, and she asked me a few months ago if I would come over and do it. I'm like, heck yes, I love being there. It's so much fun. So she was telling me the dates. I was like, okay, so when are they going to get married? And she told me the dates. And then I looked at her and I go, do you have a wedding at like X at that time? And she's like, yeah. I go, why don't I stay longer and work the wedding so that you can go to all the days of his? Because it's like a multi-day wedding, and she was going to miss one of it. I'm like, why don't I stay longer and I'll work that wedding so you can go be with him? And she's just like crying, we're just like crying together. And she's like, you would do that? I'm like, yeah, I would do that. And she's like, that, I feel like that's like too much to ask. Like, are you sure? And I said to her, I said, the main issue between him and I was the fact that I was traveling a lot for work, and I just couldn't give him the type of relationship that he wanted, and he wanted me there. And I said, he had the same resentment toward you, where you weren't there. You were constantly working and living your passion, and he wanted you there. I said, it would be a really big living amends for me if I could do this for both you and him.
Wow.
And right. And like, I even get a little emotional thinking about it. I was like, I just feel like it'd be a really big living amends for me to be able to do this so that you can go be with him and heal and just like continue to mend that relationship. And she was just so grateful. And she told me that she called him after and told him that she told me, and that I offered to do that. And that he was even like, wait, what?
Wow.
He's willing. She offered to do that. And she was like, yeah. She said she's going to do it. And he's like, oh my God, okay. Like, thanks. Like, so it's so funny. At first I was like, oh my God, am I being masochistic? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Am I crazy? But nothing in my body feels wrong. It feels so right. And I realized, I'm like, this is finally my chance to like truly move on. Because I didn't know just how much I wasn't moving on until experiencing this.
Wow. So thank you so much for sharing all that, Teal, and just being so open about what's happening in real time. Because that's a lot to share, like when it's happening now. And the only piece that I knew was that he's engaged. I didn't know like all the details of any of the other pieces, but yeah, that's wild. So how are you feeling about everything now today?
I feel the same. I thought maybe that I would feel differently. I keep waiting for the like breakdown. I keep waiting for the falling apart, and it's just not happening. It's kind of crazy. Like I'm like, am I just that dissociated?
Well, maybe though.
And I might be. I very well might be. I mean, hey, there's definitely a part of me that was still really sad. And that still came up. Especially because, and I wish you could hear the conversation with her, because I could tell by how she was saying things she didn't mean it in any particular way. But I was asking about how, is he happy? Like, is he good? I just want to make sure he's happy, because that is very genuine. I'm always concerned if he's happy, and like, I don't want him to be depressed, because there was some stuff we dealt with during our marriage. I want him to be okay. And she said, yeah, he said he's never felt this way before.
Yeah.
I know. And it was hearing that my stomach did sink a little bit. But then I was able to quickly say to myself, okay, but when you find someone and you decide that you're going to get married again, you're probably going to say the same thing.
Maybe.
And it was in that realization that just like I would want that same type of like grace and compassion, and not take it personally, that I needed to give that to him, because it's not personal. Like, our relationship had its own journey, and it's had its own path. And when I thought about it, because I talked to his mom for a while about it, I said to her, I said, you know, part of me is sad, but then at the end, and I think part of me also thought maybe one day, maybe we'd get back to, I don't know. Like, there was definitely a part of me that was like, well, maybe you will get back together. That happens all the time. And people had said that to me too, of like, especially because him and I spiritually are living these kind of parallel lives. It's like really, really funny. His mom laughs at me all the time that he'll say something to her that he's learning, and then like a little bit later, I'll say the same thing. And then I'm looking at his spiritual journey, and he's a couple years older than me. I'm exactly like where he was in what I believe in and where I'm at, like where he was a couple years ago. Like we're just like this, right? Mm-hmm. So people have said like, well, maybe that means one day you'll come back together, whatever. And so I think in the back of my mind, that slight possibility was still there. Mm-hmm. And I really just take this happening as it being just like, let go. Because I've compared so many my dating and new relationships and guys I meet to him. And I've been holding on, right? I've been holding on to something still. And there was that, I think that was that like sigh of relief. And I also noticed too, I was explaining to a friend today when I was telling her about it, I think I felt a little responsible. Like part of me felt responsible for him or his feelings. And there's something relieving in knowing like, I don't have to be there. I don't have to be that person anymore. Like I can kind of be like, okay, I don't have to worry about him anymore. If that makes sense. Like, is that weird?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Especially if there's like, I mean, because I think a lot of us struggle with codependency stuff just mm-hmm. because we live in a society where that's really prevalent, right? Like we're learning how to just be sovereign in our own selves and not, you know, mm-hmm. make our well-being dependent on what this person is doing or not doing, right? Yeah. So I work, when I work with clients, sometimes like I have some clients and one in particular, and she's like, she was so consumed with like what was going on with her husband and how he was doing that she completely lost herself. Mm. So now she's coming back to focus just on her own self. And they may reconcile, they may not, but she's like nervous that if they do open things up again, that she'll again be so consumed with like, is he okay? What does he need? And then lose herself. So it makes sense that you would feel that, oh, okay, now that's no longer my responsibility anymore. Like I'm free of that.
Yeah. And it does. That's exactly what it felt like. And the only thing I can equate it to is, so I have this client, we're very close, and he co-parents with his ex, mm-hmm. and she has a new boyfriend. He's good friends with her new boyfriend. He mm-hmm. loves him. And I'm like, this is so weird. He goes, no, it's not. He's like, I genuinely love her. I cannot give her what she needs or wants or deserves. He treats her phenomenally. He's like, he's a great dude. I see what she sees in him. And he said it, he's like, and I get to have a relationship with her still because of the kids. He goes, but also at the end of the day, when she wants to bring some emotional stuff to me that I don't want to handle, he's like, I just remind her that she has a great guy and that's who she goes to with that. And it's so funny because that's how I feel with this too, is it's like, mm-hmm. I can watch from afar, we can have a relationship from afar, but I don't have to deal with any of that. So it's something that was kind of like relieving about that, where I'm like, oh yeah, I can just like wish him the best, send them so much love. And then if it like, I don't have to have any conflict. There's no more conflict. There's no more disagreements. There's no more of him wanting me to be there and me wanting my business. Right. And so it was like this final realization of like, oh wait, yeah, I'm not responsible for him anymore. He's not responsible for me. I can just continue to truly do what I want, because I would have to abandon who I am. Like you're talking about with your client, like I would have to abandon what I'm into and have to abandon my business in order to give him what he wanted. And like, that was how, at the end of the day, the day that we decided to get divorced, it was literally, he's like, quit your job, you know? And he offered me something. And then I was like, no. Mm-hmm. And then he offered me something else. And I was like, no. Then he's like, I guess then this is it. And because that was the thing, is I refused to give up my career and what I really, really love doing and my purpose. And that's okay, because I need that for me to feel whole. I tried the whole not working, not doing anything. Could not do it. I could not do that. It's not for me. And so, which is funny because when I look on the pattern and it talks about my relationships, it says that I need my partner to know that like my purpose and my passion sometimes will come first. And not everyone's in, and that's okay. Like, I don't want to be by someone's side constantly or whatever. Like, I'm okay with time apart. I'm okay with us having our own things. And so I just reminded myself like, oh wait, no, we're like really incompatible in many ways, which is why it ended. And that it has nothing to do with anything else really other than that, you know, like I don't need to question whether or not he loved me or didn't. Cause when she said that, when she was like, oh, he never felt this way before, then I was like, oh my God, he never loved me. And then it's like, no, there's so much other evidence to show that he did. There's like so much evidence to show that that's there and that there's still, you know, some of it there, that's bogus. And then there's also so much evidence of the incompatibility. So yeah, so far, like I said, I feel fine. You know, some people in the comments were like, oh, don't be surprised if it suddenly hits you. Oh, no, it will most definitely suddenly hit me.
Yeah.
Most definitely that is going to happen.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is when I go to France in June, his ex-girlfriend's going to be there, I think, because I think she's working the one event. And I immediately was just like, yeah, I thought of her again of like, oh, this must be more humble for her.
Maybe, but it's interesting too, like that you're thinking about her because it could potentially be another way for you to like not think about your own self.
Dude, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, it's like, oh, her over here, right? Instead of like, oh, well, what's happening?
Jess, that resonates a lot. You're right. And that, you know what I've been doing is, so I got that feeling. Remember we always talk about that feeling in our stomach and our solar plexus, where it might feel like shame or these other core wounds. I was getting a lot of that Monday night and stuff before I was traveling. And I just started sending it love. I just started sending it lots of love and being like, I love if you can't let go. Like, I love if you still love him. I love if you are okay with it, or if you're not, like any feelings, anything that was coming up, I was just trying to love it. And I just kept telling myself, like, it will come out when it needs to come out. And we can have whatever feeling we want to have about this. And that was really relieving, was just reminding myself that like no feeling or any reaction I had was going to be the wrong reaction.
Right.
And just like letting it all come up. That it's fun, but it is interesting because I've been praying a lot lately for God to show me what else I need to like heal or let go of. Like, I'm like, please show me where I'm blocked so I can finally have the relationship that I want. Right. And there were so many synchronicities that happened this weekend, like one after another. And that's like for another podcast, but that I felt it, that I'm like, this is right. I'm hearing it the right way. And like I said, his mom oh man, I wish I could have filmed how we did it and how she was with me, because it was so compassionate and so loving. Yeah. And she's really good at holding space and not trying to like change how you're feeling. Like, she knows how to cry with you. Yeah. So it was, and I also said to her, I think the cool part was too, so like in relation to moving on, one of my biggest wounds is abandonment. And because this was my family, I've been dealing with the feelings of like, oh my God, I didn't just lose him. I lost a whole family. And fortunately, the way that his mom is she doesn't treat me that way. She's like, I'm not going anywhere. And I really felt it this weekend. And I said that to her. I was like, you know, I really needed this type of unconditional love. I said, because I'm always waiting for people to just find a reason to be like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. Or I'm out, I'm leaving. Because that has happened. And her showing up and being like this, we just looked at each other and we're just like, yeah, nothing's going to tear us apart like this. And like, there's plenty of room. And she showed me that it's like, there's not just one slot that someone can fill. She's like, I have plenty of love to give. And I have a special place with you that I will have with her, because that's going to be her new daughter-in-law. Right. She's like, I have plenty to give around. And then I found out too, because I haven't been to France since, what was it? I was there for what would have been my 10th anniversary. I went there We weren't celebrating our anniversary together. I went back there because it's a very healing place for me. It's where we got married. And so nothing had been finalized yet. So I haven't been there since then. And so I asked her, I was like, are my pictures still up? Because I was very prepared for me to just be like erased. And she's like, yeah, why wouldn't they be? And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, the photos shoots and everything that we've done, like the photos are there. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And it was just so like, we talk about the stories we tell ourselves, right? Like I had been telling myself these stories, basically just convincing myself that she like hated me or like, you know what I'm more heated to, like all this stuff. And she's just like, what are you talking about? No, like I love you. I always have, and I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And it was really healing. Like the whole conversation, everything, like when I say I really could feel my highest self just shining down, smiling, like this is what you need to get to the next thing. It's okay to move on.
Wow. Yeah, totally. And I like that you presenced that part where you also sat with yourself and said like, okay, however I'm feeling about this, like I'm going to have that space for whatever that is. Right. Because right now you're feeling this way and that's beautiful. And what a gift, right? Like, thank God. And you're human and different things could come up. Because if anyone's watching this and you're like, oh, well, it's this really beautiful story about how when my ex moves on and I'm totally okay with it. Right. It's like, I mean, I'm sure there are many people, myself included, that like, I mean, I was in a relationship for 5 years, which was my longest relationship. And the person who I moved to LA for, and, you know, when we broke up, like long story short, I felt free initially. I was like, thank God. And then he ended up meeting someone else, told me it wasn't serious. And then, you know, fast forward like to now, which is 12 years later, 13, like they're married, they have 4 kids, like it's a whole thing. And that was a really hard thing for me. So just bringing that up because it's different for everybody. But I hear what you're saying, Teal, because I know you've been praying, and you told me this before, right? Because I was having a really hard time, and Teal asked me, what have you been praying for? And I said, to be aligned with the highest version of myself and, you know, to just keep expanding. And she was like, well, then stop praying for that. Because it's like when our prayers are really, really powerful, right? So if you're praying for a certain thing that you're desiring, then God, spirit comes in to like reorganize and work things in our favor, right? But it can look like a dismantling or a crumbling or like everything is going wrong. And so, but it's interesting because you've been praying for yourself to be released from that energy, right?
I have.
Like, you told me that. And so it's like, wow, check this out.
I've been praying that, like, I've actually like envisioned like cutting the cord too. Yeah. Like I've had been praying for that. I've done that before and that hasn't worked. Like people are like, oh, just do, you know, you've done those meditations where like, I've done those. I've done the candles, I've done cords, I've done the visual. Nothing worked. But lately I've really been like, no, really, God, like this is blocking me. Like, yeah, I just really need this. And it's funny. And just to preface, like, this is 4.5 years later, 5 years. I mean, it's been 5 years since we got separated, you know, 4.5 since we've been divorced. So like, this isn't like it's like yesterday, right? This has been years. This is years now. You know, it is multiple relationships with him, but I haven't been with anyone really. It's like, I mean, I've had like things here and there, but nothing serious. And that's okay. Everyone's different, right? But when he initially, like the first person he dated after me, I was a mess. Like I was not okay. I was literally like, it was funny because we were good. Things were fine. I'm like, oh, I'm having the best divorce ever. Like everything's fine, right? Like really, like if you would have saw me, people were like, wow, you guys are doing so well. Like you're friends, things are great. I was like dating, you know, here and there, random people, like nothing serious. And then when he had his first serious girlfriend, I mean, I lost it. Yeah. I like completely fell apart. I'm talking in the bath, hysterical crying. His mom's like patting my back and bathing me, making her okay. Like I was a mess. I was not okay. So for me to be like, oh, so that's why I think it feels pivotal. Is like, I think of that girl who was so distraught and so destroyed and felt so unloved and unwanted then. And now a few years later, for the real concrete thing to happen, to have that initial, like, okay, I'm happy for him. Like, yeah, let me give this gift and help out somehow to make sure this can happen, because there's complications with it. There's religious issues that are not making it go smooth for him. And he does seem happy, so I'm like, how can I make it better? Right. And so it's interesting because I have so much compassion for that woman who was so distraught and was broken. Now a woman who's able to have done so much around it and recognize right away what's coming up and hold this space. That I think that's what's exciting too, is like recognizing that since I've been praying for this to happen, well, I've been praying for my highest timeline and like that my highest good to have the relationship that I want. Since I've been praying for that, I trust that this is exactly what I need to go through. I trust that like everything is happening exactly as it needs to. And that I am going to have what I want. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be fine. And it just feels like a release. And again, yeah, I'm probably going to be a mess. Like there's definitely going to be a time where I'm crying hysterically over this, but at least right now it's good to, I think, cause part of me was judging that I was okay. Part of me was like, why are you like this? You should be flipping out and you should not be okay. And I found myself like not really even telling, like, I'm just told you now, you know what I mean? Kind of like, not really even like talking about it or not really thinking much about it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And yeah, hey, maybe dissociation, but I'm also okay with it. But I know you understand, which is what's so nice. Is like, you've gone through that similar thing, like you said, and now look. And
yeah. And even if you are dissociated a little bit, right? Okay, great.
Yeah, exactly.
Because our subconscious knows how much we can handle in any given moment, right? So we might have moments of like needing to dissociate a little bit and not making that wrong. And I don't know if that's actually what's happening here, but if it is, okay, right? And then, but the thing I know about you in this relationship is that you have processed a lot of all of it, right? Like we've had really in-depth conversations and like the grief that you've had to walk through and the fire that you've had to walk through to like find yourself and come back home to yourself and just so good within your own self. Like you've done all of that. So it's like, maybe this, you can handle it now. So it's happening now because it's the time for it to happen that you can handle it. Right.
Yeah. No, it's so funny you said that too. And I was thinking timeline wise, I remember when I first got divorced, someone told me, they're like, they say it's half the amount of the relationship that you'll need to like heal or get over it. And I'm like, that's going to happen way sooner. And I'm like, it's like right around half. Like, like for at least my time, like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, I actually understand what that person was talking about now. And I get it. And it's like, there's those different levels of healing, right? It's like, you have the immediate stuff, and then you have stuff that comes a little later, stuff that happens through time, stuff that happens through inner work, stuff that happens through just having other relationships. And yeah, you're right. It's just, it's those different levels. And fortunately, you know me well enough that how I'll be no matter what. And I know you well enough that if that day does come where I'm upset, that I can come and talk to you about it. But sure. Hopefully anyone watching this can recognize, like, there is no one way to feel, and that you might feel multiple things, and that it's going to change. And trusting that we're experiencing what we need to get to where we want to go. And just knowing that we are loved no matter what. We are wanted no matter what. We are enough. That has been the thing that I've been saying to myself over and over again. So when that little bit of doubt, that little thing creeps up, that's like, you're not loved, you're not lovable, why aren't you with someone right now? While all these little things in my head, I just sit there and I go, I love you no matter what. You are so lovable. You are so wanted. You are so enough. And that the two aren't mutually exclusive. Like, I can recognize that. Like, I don't need him to love me, or I don't need to be with someone to prove that I'm lovable, right? It's like, that's the thing that I've been realizing is and he can have his own relationship and it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Just not taking all that personal, not trying to personalize it, because it's not. And
Right.
that's been the growth. That's like the true measure of growth, is like, oh, I'm not taking this personally.
Woo! That is literally the freedom.
Yeah.
That's it. That to me, that's like one of the biggest reasons to do this work, is to be able to create some space between where we would automatically go with it, right? Like internalizing it, making it mean, like for me, like I'm rejected, I'm abandoned, like nobody ever shows up, everyone always leaves, like da da da. To have some space from that narrative, just a little space, and it might still be there, but maybe the volume's turned down a little bit, or maybe it's louder sometimes than others, but you have that space of like, wait, there's more, it's not black and white. And that talked about in the last episode, like trauma brain, when trauma brain comes in and tells you these horror stories, right? But now, thank God, there's enough space where it's like, this isn't personal, it's not a reflection on me, and it doesn't mean that our connection was any less. It doesn't mean that he didn't love me. Like all of these stories that we tell are really just stories, and it's more nuanced than that. And this human experience is, woo, there's just so much. There's a lot of like learning how to just ride the waves, right? Of like when everything's beautiful and going well, and then things are really hard, and learning to just surf the waves of life, because there's no way other than to experience. If you want to keep an open heart, which, is going to be painful, then you're going to have moments where it's going to be really excruciating, and moments where it's going to be the most beautiful thing you've experienced. And so everything's temporary. So it's
exactly. No, it is. It's all temporary, and it's all changing and evolving. I think that's been the biggest thing, is it's like how I feel today is not necessarily how I'm going to feel tomorrow. And it might be, but it might even evolve to a bigger feeling, or slightly, it's like, and because we're changing and evolving. And so, you constantly talk about oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of like the window of tolerance.
Yeah.
And so even with this, the being able, because you said black and white, and that being able to hold both true, as we grow our window of tolerance, we're able to grow it bigger, so that we can hold both. So that we can have this part of us that's grieving and sad and remembering other things, and this other part that's just genuinely happy because they love this person and they want them to be okay. And I think that's what's so cool. It's like, as we do this work, as we're healing, we're growing our window of tolerance, so we're able to do that, and we're able to tap into that right away. So it's like, it's quicker that I'm able to, and I watch you do it too, that we're able to recognize, like, wait, no need to demonize them, right? No need to demonize her. Like, because I can feel myself so badly wanting to like be like, oh well, it must be love bombing, or it must be this, or she must not be that great, or she just wants him for his money. Like, I'm telling myself all these stories to try and, again, because I was making it personal. So I had to make up these stories because I was personal. And then once I did that away, it was like, no, they could just be like two people happy in love. It has nothing to do with us. And it's funny because Joe and I were just talking about this, of course, a week or two ago, with friends of ours that broke up. And it was funny hearing both sides of them. Like, I know the girl, and like she's dating someone, and then like he knows the guy, and like he's like randomly seeing someone, and realizing that with both of them, it wasn't personal toward their ex. And it was a good reminder for us that when our ex, or the last person we were dating, like goes and moves on, or they're flirting, or they're dating someone new, like it very rarely has anything to do with us. It's all about them. Like, unless someone's doing something to get back at you, right? That might be a thing, and you know that for a fact. But most of the time, it's like, and even then, it's their own stuff that they feel the need to do that. And so it was really good reminder when we were watching it happen that it could be the person goes that night, goes to a bar, or goes somewhere and goes and hooks up with someone, or they call up their ex, right? It's not about us. It might hurt, but it's not about us.
Yeah. And in the book, The 4 Agreements, they talk about, one of the agreements is take nothing personally. And it says like how other people relate to you is a projection of their own reality and their own dream. right? So when you know that, you can really see it, because once you start to see your own projections, like when you know your own internal world more and more, right? Which is why it's really important to know ourselves. And you can see how you project it out like a movie screen and then react to it, right? Everyone's doing that all the time. So it's never really personal. It's actually more about the way the person relates to their own selves, because relationships are a mirror for us, right? So and it's nuanced there too, right? Because it doesn't mean it's a direct mirror. It means you will see aspects of yourself the closer you get to someone else within that dynamic, right? And so some people, many people, don't have an awareness of this, or usually they don't. And then they run from their own reflection. And that's really why it's not personal. And so, you know, it's a dance though, right? Like, and I just before our call, I was on the phone with a fellow from our program, and she just had this experience where it was like, she's really been, you know, she had this connection with this guy. They've been, you know, separated for 8 months. Yesterday, they had this whole like moment and like coming back together, and had the whole thing go on, right? Like close, beautiful, intimate, all the things. And then today he calls her and tells her like he needs no contact with her. So it was like roller coaster, right? Like months, her doing her own work. Then he tells her this. And so what I was saying to her is I was like, listen, I'm here with you and for you in the emotion of all of it, because I really get it. Like, it's really hard to have that happen. And it's today, in this moment, that's what's happening today, right? We have no idea what's happening tomorrow, a month from now, a year from now. We don't know. And once you've lived enough of life, you can see that, right? But in the moment, it doesn't matter because you're consumed with the emotion and the grief. But she was like, well, it means I'm never going to talk to him again, right? And I was like, maybe not. Like, we don't know. But for me, that's been so helpful of like bringing it back to today. Because even if today is the most painful and the most chaotic, and it's like, okay, it's today. In this moment, that's what it is today. And maybe I feel awful. And maybe my mind is telling me all kinds of stories and I'm living in trauma land today, right? But things can shift. They really can change. And the thing too with this, what happened in your life right now, is that it creates space. Mm-hmm. So what I was sharing with my friend is like, she read me this, she's a songwriter, and it was just, she read me the song that she wrote out of this experience. And I was like, girl, but the beauty, the energy behind that song and the vulnerability and the courage to like, just be so open-hearted. I was like, that is your energetic match. Like, that's your match. So if this guy can't show up in that way for whatever reason, where he's at, his own capacity, like, God is not going to let that hang out.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same. It's too much of a discrepancy in frequency right now. Right. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. We don't know, because people can do work. Energies can change. Like you said, you know, people can be divorced and get remarried again. Like, I've seen it all. I've literally seen it all, and I've experienced it all. And even like my ex the other day, who was like my ticket into like 12-step, basically. Well, I was my ticket, but you know, but he messaged me the other day, like telling me that him and his girlfriend broke up and blah, 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 blah. And there would have been a time when I would have like just died for that to happen. Right. And I was just like seeing it through this completely different lens of like, wow, number one, I've been that person before, where like something ends and I'm like, oh, let me reach for like whatever other possible thing to like anchor myself to. And also I just really didn't have any desire to communicate with them at all. Like, I was polite, but I was just like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry that happened, you know? And then like, that's all. I don't want to keep, but it's just things change. And I was reminded this weekend, which we could talk about on maybe another episode, but I had a pretty big experience this weekend where I went to an ayahuasca retreat, and it was my first time ever. And it was interesting. But one of the pieces of information that came through was like, if you have any doubt that God exists, like any doubt, which is understandable, right? Watch a nature documentary, because just watch like the brilliance and like the intricacy and how this leads to this, leads to that, leads to that. And everything is like working in this amazing way all together, orchestrated in a way that could not be planned, right? And know that that's happening in your life. It's happening right now. And so some of the things might look a little like, oh no, I don't want that. Like, I know I've had many of those, like that. And when you have but we don't know. And it's going to be so interesting to see now that this space is created in your life, what's going to come into it. 'Cause something will come into it.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I laugh. I have a date tonight, but like,
I know. And wait, let's just pause there for a second. Because if you guys were listening, was it a couple weeks or maybe even a week ago, Teal was talking about how she needed a little break from dating, right? And now I messaged her today and I was like, hey, would you maybe want to go to this little event tonight? This like whatever, I don't even want to say it's like a singles event. It sounds so depressing, but it was this event called The Feels. That's whatever. It's like this conscious single, whatever. And Teal's like, oh, actually I have a date and I'm feeling like much better about that whole thing. And it's so interesting because just a week or two ago, you were saying that you needed a break from dating.
yeah. And I was talking about like fears and stuff around men, being like, I don't want to be around men, everything. I mean, I will say this, it's somebody that I know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why I'm open for it, is because there's a level of comfort there. Like there's some comfortability. Like it's not like I'm going in blind. Like I already know this person and I've spent some time with them. Just the timing was off. And it's funny, but it is funny though, Jess. Like there were two guys that I had said to myself, if they ever came back, because again, it was like timing situations. Where like I was going through something or they were, or like they just got out of something, like it just wasn't, but there was always like a connection and like a respect and we got along well. And there was two different guys. And I had always said like, if either of them came back, that I would consider dating them. Like if they, either of them like were like, hey, I want to date you, let's try this out. And I'd be like, okay, let's do it. Because there was never any like serious bad blood. Like maybe there was some sloppiness or messiness on like how they handled situations. Like the person I'm seeing tonight, like there was a situation and, you know, cause you were brought up to me, like, I thought I didn't like him. And I was like, no, like he did kind of, there was some sloppiness, but, and I gave him some grace because he was someone that like, was in a relationship for 5 years and then all of a sudden was dating again. And I just feel like he needed to find his bearings. Like sometimes it is the truth. And he just handled the situation like a little messily, but then he was fine. And like after that, and we're friends, like we have mutual friends, like we're friendly and stuff. So he's great. Other than that, he's like a really sweet person. And every time we've hung out has been like really kind and really sweet. So that alone, and I have no expectations, but yeah, it is funny though, how quickly things shift. And I think you're right. It's like, you talk about creating that space. And I feel like that's been your theme right now. And hopefully we'll get to talk about your journey on the next episode. Maybe that's what we discuss because I want to hear all about it too. But it's like, I think about that. It's like, if we want to grab onto the next thing, we want that gold, that beautiful relationship, but we can't have it if we're holding on to shit.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, Teal. Sometimes this just amazes me how aligned we are. Like I just get blown away because what I wanted to say as I was listening to you was like, we can't, if we're holding on like this, and this is from Jill actually, who's one of our yoga teachers, but if you're holding on, like you can't, your hands aren't open to like receive anything, right? Versus if you let go, you give the opportunity to have it back. It's like that paradox of like, if you let it go, you can be open to having it back. It might be in a different form. Yeah. But you really, and we don't know what it's going to look like. And that's actually the romance of life. It's like, we don't know. Right. But I mean, I had this whole conversation with one of the guys that I dated like a few months ago or whatever, that, you know, that we went camping with. And,
yes.
And we had the healthiest, like, it was just so, I don't know. we sort of like opened up to each other. I was just going through a breakup. I wasn't fully ready. He also wasn't really fully ready, but we have this like really beautiful heart connection with each other. And we've had a few conversations just about all the things, like, and something came up that really made it clear that it wasn't a line for us to continue. And, you know, we're still in each other's lives, we're friends, but we had conversations last night or a couple nights ago, and he was asking me like, do you think I have some growing up to do? And like, I'm noticing this about myself and da 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 da. And I was talking to him about some of my stuff because he had mentioned to me, he was like feeling a little bit like I had a hard time letting go. And I was like, yeah, I have a really hard time letting go. Like, this has been one of the biggest lessons of my life but I let him go so much more easily than I have in the past. And like, it's just really interesting because we're all out here just doing the best we can. You know, everybody's learning, doing the best they can at different levels. We've all been hurt at this point in relationship. I mean, some of us from the time we were really little, some of us older, we all have varying levels of trauma. So I think we're doing the best we can. And it's just all learning in this earth school.
Earth school. No, it's true. And I think the cool thing is both of us are experiencing different types of relationships. So we'll have these connections with people that we keep coming back around again, that it might not be our forever connection. Who knows? We don't know. Right. Yeah. But they're kinder and softer.
Yes.
Than the other ones that are really strong. And you know, what's interesting is I also prayed to God. Like, I was praying, I was like, can you just like, I just need like a soft landing right now. Like, and the funny thing is this person that I'm going out tonight was around right before I went through my big, like, heartbreak type stuff that just happened in January. And I swear I said it, even they were there with me when I like was a little bit disappointed with the date and kind of felt, and I felt like they were like my soft landing. Like, through. And so it's kind of funny that they popped up right now and this is happening, because it literally was this weekend that they like popped back up, and then that same, like, the next day was when I found out about like him getting married, like, you know. And so it was kind of funny, and I'm like, oh, I feel like this person, even if they're just here for temporarily to provide me with a little bit of comfort and a soft landing, that's great too, because there's learning in that as well. Like, there's still like a beautiful exchange, and it's still like things don't have to, I'm noticing that when I really can pray for that relief, that like it does come in very unexpected ways. And my job right now is to not try and make it something that it's not. And that's what I keep reminding myself, is like, whatever this is, let it be. And don't try and make it into something that it's not, because if it's just meant to be this softer landing so I can watch my next thing, great. But I will say this, Jess, this, you know, it's funny, and and then we do have to go in a few minutes, but I will say this. On the eclipse, you had me reach out to your friend to get her for a reading.
Oh, yeah.
And she mentioned an air sign, like, coming in or back into my life or whatever, that would help me to the next part of my journey. They're like, they'll just get you to the next level. And I did laugh, because I was like, well, my mother is a Libra. And so I'm like, there is that. She's kind of back in my life, but also this guy is a Gemini. And so I just like cracked up about that, because I had to relook at the reading if she said romantic or not. Because if it's romantic, like, I just laughed that of all of the people to like come back into my life or come in, that like it was him. And I'm just like, there's that air sign again. Like, so it was just really funny that I'm like, I swear if this reading was totally right, then it, no matter what, it's the next level. Like no matter what, it's the next step. And it's just, again, my only job now is to like not try and make it something that it's not, and just let it unfold. Because what I've been realizing, and we've talked about this before, and I forget if we discussed it on here or not, but it's that we are in a 3D world, or actually multiple dimensions, but we are 3D beings, so we can only see the 3D. We cannot see the whole timeline. So we're only seeing this. So things are going to happen, and we're going to be like, but what? And it's kind of like, we just have to trust that God's like, no, I'm telling you, this is the quickest way to get you to what you want. And we're like, but no, this seems more clear. And they're like, no. That seems clear, but I promise you're going to be going around in circles. You're going to be going like this. It's not going to get you there. This is the way to go. And you're like, but there's all of these things in the way, and it seems so. Just trust me. This is the way to go. And that's what I feel like has been happening lately, is I've been praying for my highest good, for my highest time, and have the things that I really desire and that I think are part of my purpose. And that I'm just been sitting back and allowing God to be like, okay, this is it. Even if I'm like, are you sure? Because this feels icky. This doesn't feel like it's it. It's like, trust me, go toward this. This is it. As opposed to going what might seem like the obvious route. And sometimes it looks like I'm going toward the pain, or I'm going toward the thing but I know deep down, I'm like, okay, this is the next little nugget, the next little thing. And there were so many signs this weekend that I felt were reinforcing me. Like I said, even the alignment, like I ended up in Florida this weekend because my friend won tickets to the Kenny Chesney concert and just happened to invite me. Mm-hmm. And then I find out that my ex's mom is going to the same concert. She doesn't even live in that state. She lives in New Jersey.
Wow.
Yeah. And that my friend, who I haven't seen in years, who I got to reconnect with, that it was because she was bringing her. And then I find out that my ex-sister-in-law and niece were also going to the same concert. And so we all met up there together. And it was just kind of like, wait, why are we all at this concert when we're from 3 or 4 different states, like meeting up? And then an old groom was at that concert. He got me upgraded, got us better tickets. He like called me up. He's like, I heard you're here. You want better tickets? I'm like, yeah. He upgrades me to there. We have a special connection like with that whole scene too. So that was cool. And then there was like all these other little things where then like the woman that I used to work with for event planning, who was a family friend, she was in town. And so my friend Anne, who was there for the concert, we meet for dinner, and then like it turns out they have mutual friends from like other states. Like I'm talking like it was so wild. And then like my friend that I was with, Leah, her and I went to a meeting when we were down there. We go to this meeting. It's just us and this one other guy. And he goes, I'm going to put on a speaker tape if that's okay. We're like, cool. He chooses this random speaker tape. It turns out that Leah had just met that woman 2 weeks ago. The woman starts speaking on the speaker tape. And it's like she's like, oh, I just met her 2 weeks ago. And we're like, what? There was, and he's like, I just chose a random one. And then I'm in that meeting. And as I'm walking in, there's this giant picture, I'll send it to you, of Mother Mary from Guadalupe. And you know, yes, that has been calling me. And on top of that, my friend Anne, I told her about that. And she's like, oh my gosh, I have to tell you about my experiences with her. And she tells me all these experiences. And then there was like Rosa, like it was like one synchronicity after another, that when I was getting this news, I just sat there in full faith that I'm like, I am receiving this exactly how I need to receive this, exactly the time I need to receive it for my own highest good. And I just need to like hug it and embrace it and go with it and not view this as like, why is this happening to me? Or why is this happening? Right? Like, it was a full embrace moment of I trust. And it was all of it. Like I said, it was just like one thing. I'm like, okay, this is the path. This is it. It's all happening for me exactly at the right time.
Right. And that is like the evidence of like synchronicities are like the divine orchestration of everything. Right. So that's one of the things that I pray for lately. I'm just like, God, please have me just be so aware of the divine orchestration of everything so that I can just surrender my need to try to like control or orchestrate or work this out in the way that I think it should go. And also I feel like you have grace come through, right? Like this grace shows up. And there's this song that I love so much. It's the most beautiful song by this girl, Kenna Childs. I think her name's Kenna Childs, and it's called Held. And it's talking about a mother who loses her baby, right? And it's like, what kind of like, it's just way too much for anyone to ever go through. But also talking about how no matter what happens, we're held. Like, and it's such a beautiful song. And I know when I was going through like one of the hardest times in my entire life, and I found that song, I was like, oh my God, because I was held, like really held. It was excruciating, and like devastating and like death, but I was held. And it sounds like you were held through this and you're being held.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, and you said it kind of before, things happen at different times when we have the support and we can handle it.
Yeah.
And there is this like just intermingling and everything is super connected. And it's like we're at this place where there's so much support, there's so much levels to it, in terms of my healing and everything, that it's like, yeah, I'm okay. Like I'm not giving anything more than I can handle. And everything's happening exactly as it needs to, because if you were to tell me, you know what I mean, if you that I would be here now a few years ago, like, what are you talking about? Right. And I'm very happy with where I'm at and what I'm doing and who I'm with. And things have evolved really beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
That now it's more excited to be like, okay, what can come in now if we fully move on and fully let this go? Like,
yeah.
How much space can I make to have something even bigger and brighter? And I think that's the real crux of it, is like, how can we look at a situation that's happening that seems totally wrong or unideal or no, what's happening, to being like, how can I use this for me? And just allow this to be the catalyst so I can fully let go, fully move on, and just open up the space to have what I know is more for me and more compatible. And so if you are going through this, we really encourage you to reach out to us, comment. If you missed the beginning of this and you want some more context, this will be available on YouTube. We post it tomorrow. You can even DM Jess and get on her email list, because she sends out a direct link to this as well. And we'll try and post on our own stories, but it's going to be posted on YouTube. That's where we have all of our other videos that we reference. If you like them, please watch, share, comment, send it to whoever you think needs it. Let us know if there's anything that you really want to talk about in the comments, or DM us, let us know if you would like to work with Jess, because hopefully you got a little taste too, what it's like when you share with her, and how she gives examples, how beautifully she holds space, because she helps me so much. And this is really similar to what it's like when we just talk and let each other know what's going on and any updates. So if you would like to work with Jess, I highly suggest it. She has helped me so much. Please, please, please reach out to her. We really, really love hearing from all of you, especially when we get feedback and we hear what you thought about it, because then we know what people relate to. That's like the whole purpose of this podcast, is to be like, I can relate. So we want to know what you relate to and what you want to hear about. So reach out to us.
Beautiful. Yes. I love that so much. And just if you're, this is a process. So I wouldn't rush yourself to like, oh, how can I see this in a way that it's all like, you may not be there yet. So that's okay too, right? When Teal initially was describing, like, she had space for every part of whatever's coming up for her, right? But this stuff is complex and you don't have to walk through it on your own. And we really want to build community here and just have a space where all the things that maybe aren't really being openly spoken about, or experiences or emotions or thoughts, can just be here and be held here. And all of you is welcome here and loved here. So yeah, let us know if anything comes up for you, if you have questions, any topics you want us to cover. And thank you so much, Teal.
Thank you. We'll see you all next week.